Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am being joined by a buddy of mine, Mr. John Hansen. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Thank you very much for coming on. For those who don't know you, John, what are you? Who are you? Do you have a title or any kind of job specific? Here I am.
Currently I work with the Army Reserve as a 42 Alpha, which is a human resources specialist. I am a staff sergeant, which is E6. It's kind of like just above the mid range as far as enlisted go. So my responsibility scope has expanded. So I'm a little bit more responsible for a little bit more than some the junior soldiers. But big picture for human resource is I assist soldiers in kind of like the more paperwork side of their lives, like making sure their pay's correct, making sure all their documents are correct. There's so many broad spectrum aspects of the job, so it's kind of hard to narrow it down, but a lot of paperwork. I'm admin.
Gotcha. And what made you decide that being HR admin type in the Army was the route you wanted to be in? Is this where you wanted to be right now? Is this kind of just a job?
Well, that's a long story. So I was originally in the Marine Corps, as I noticed from the flag behind me. Um, and I loved that job. I really did. It was amazing. I loved the people I worked with. They're my family. But I knew that that job I was doing wasn't going to be a career job. And even only 5 years active duty, I could tell that my body physically wasn't going to keep up to the standards that the Marine Corps holds. And so a sister of mine who's been in the Army for 20 years now talked me into making the switch and coming over to the Army and doing a job that's a bit more, I don't want to say relaxed, but less physically intensive.
Mm.
Just for the betterment of my health, I guess both mentally and physically. And also HR because it's such a broad spectrum field. I could be placed in so many different positions all over the world, which is kind of the path I was looking for, is ways to get where I wanted to be.
And so you've been in the Army now for how long?
I've been in the Army for 3.5 years, roughly. And before that, it was Marine Corps for 5 years.
And you got into the military starting with the Marines just straight out of high school, or how long did you wait, or how was that? How'd you get into it in the first place?
It was roughly a year after high school. I was working a couple jobs, working my butt off, trying to live like my friends do who had money from the start. And one of my high school buddies messaged me out of the blue to come talk to the recruiter. And
And
I
they got
remember
you.
I was there at Target stocking shelves, making sure all the labels are faced. And he messaged me and said, "Hey, you should come talk to the recruiter." And I was like, you know what? Sure, why not? Could see what's going on. So that's how it started.
Gotcha. Now, for anyone who might be curious into joining the military, is it as easy as some people make it out to be, where it's so like, oh, you've got no other options, nothing else to do, just join the military? How could anyone join? Is it mostly kind of just a physical demand? Is there still like an educational test you need to pass to get in? What's the rigor for getting into just flatline military? You can speak specifically on Marines if you'd like to.
Okay. So joining the military is pretty easy. If you like just throw yourself at the recruiter, they'll find a way to get you in. Like, you can have a history of like, so long as you don't have any felonies on your record and you graduated high school and you don't have any major medical issues, they'll probably take you. Like, you can be like top of your class, smartest guy, and get in, but you could also be the 1.2 and get it just fine, because there's always something to be done. There's always jobs to be had. So getting in itself is relatively easy. Now, what will dictate what kind of jobs you can have in the military? Most students in high school take what's called the ASVAB. I can't remember what the acronym
Some acronym
is,
thing.
but it's like pretty much an aptitude test for general acuity to mathematics, engineering, mechanical smarts, like how an engine works, or like how a gear would work, right? So I'm sure many people would remember that test. So if you score high on that test, there's certain jobs in the military that require a certain score for you to be able to join that job. I retook my ASVAB right before I joined, and I scored pretty high. Not bragging, but
Hey, that's fine.
I was able to have whatever job I wanted. However, I didn't really know what I was getting into. So the recruiters have a lot of power over people that are joining, and it's not just like, a lot of people kind of get tricked into certain positions. Essentially, all I knew when I was joining was that I'm going to be in some kind of, I'm going to work on an aircraft or something. That wasn't anywhere near what I was doing, but I'm more than happy with where I was and what I was doing.
Now, the curiosity cat in me, of course, can't help. How do you mean by the quote unquote tricked thing? Is it like heavily swayed in various directions by the
So
recruiter?
the military, the recruiters have a job, and their job is to get you in. And there's usually only a certain amount of specific jobs available, and the recruiters will generally need to push people to a specific job that needs bodies. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they put a lot of trust in the recruiter to just like, the recruiter will take care of them. The recruiters are very nice, very friendly, and a lot of people, they go in, think they're going to get one job, and end up with something completely different because the recruiter they maybe didn't lie.
They avoided explicit truth about how it was probably going to go down.
Yes. And the service members don't find out until they're already in, going through training, and they go to their like supervisor and like, hey, I thought I was going to be able to do this. And then they get laughed at because they're like, ha, you got. So
that's a fun dynamic.
Yep.
So how long is, for at least the Marines, how long is training? So like once you get down with the recruiter and they say, okay, yep, application looks good. How long is training until you can be, to whatever degree, you are now a Marine?
13 weeks.
And that's just completely grueling PT, physical sort of thing? Or is it a variety of learning in there too? Or how's that going?
Yeah, it's pretty much the indoctrination into the service. And in that period, you're essentially being like broken down. So like everybody's the same. You get there, everybody shaves their head bald. Everybody's wearing the same thing. You're all pieces of shit. Right? You have no value at that time. That's how they put it, right? You're not Marines, you're not a future Marine, you're not a future soldier, you're not anything. You are a recruit. and they put you through. It's, highly physically intensive. A lot of people end up with physical injuries where they have to either recycle, so like start over again because of their injuries, or pick up in another cycle, or they get sent home because they're no longer physically capable. So it is very physically intensive, especially for people that were not physically active prior to. But then it's how I thought of it before going was like, I tried getting as physically active as I could beforehand, doing a lot of running and PT sessions on my own, so that when I got there, I wouldn't have to worry too much about the physical aspect and more about the mental aspect.
Gotcha.
Because you get there and you don't sleep for like 3 days, just being constantly harassed, bombarded with all these things going on around you. And yeah, it pretty much sets the tone for the rest of the time you're there. The only time it got better was, I don't know, towards the end, where you got familiar with the other people you've been in there with. You know your drill instructors. The drill instructors they go in phases. At first, they're the most like aggressive, bombarding, like crude beings you could imagine. But then, as you go through the cycle, they kind of adjust their training. There's one, I can't remember the name. He's like the senior drill instructor. They usually get like 4 drill instructors per platoon. So you have like 2 drill instructors that are the mad dogs. They are just there to cause mayhem, terror. That's their job. 24/7. They cause the most pain. That's their job.
What a job.
Then you have like the second in command guy, who's like right below the senior. He's kind of in between. He'll still like, get on people and
still
whatnot.
bash your balls and such.
Yeah. But then you have a senior drill instructor who takes on the more like the mentor role. They take a bit more of a step back. They'll take a little bit more of a relaxed approach, talk to you in the evenings before you go to bed and whatnot. He's there when the mail gets delivered, so he can watch you open your mail. Yeah. But otherwise, until the very last week you're there, where you go into the crucible, and it's a week of hell, but you get through that, and then it's over. It's like you're there for, I think that's like week 12 is you do the crucible, and then week 13 is the final week you're there. You're a Marine in week 13. But at the end of the crucible, all your drill instructors come around, and they have this box, and it has the EGA, that guy. It's a little black EGA, and they go around the drill instructors that have been harassing you and just beating the shit out of you for the last few months. They come around, and I'm going to get emotional thinking about it, because take this EGA, they shake your hand, say, "Congratulations, Marine." Dude, that's
the sugar stuff right there.
That shit was awesome. And you're doing it at like the top of this hill that you just climbed. As like the sun rises, it's like super, you're still in the desert, but it's still like super picturesque. And you're just like, this is incredible. And people are like breaking down in tears. They're just like, it's the greatest moment in their lives. Like, they did it. And it's not even all the like, people think of Marines, they're like, oh, big badass motherfuckers. A lot of them aren't. That's just like the mental aspect going through the training is like, you don't have to be the strongest, toughest motherfucker out there. But if you push yourself and like don't give up, you're as good as the rest. Yeah.
So, was it that motif that made you decide in the Marines in the first place?
Um, when I went and spoke with a recruiter, um, so my sister had kind of talked to me while I was in high school, like was saying maybe I should look at the army. But I wasn't really thinking the military was for me. But then I went and talked to the Marine Corps recruiter, and it was the whole like, well, if I'm gonna do this, might as well be part of the best. Like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it.
Shoot
Right?
the real shot.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad you said something about not every Marine has to be, just a total big gorilla with a IQ of 1,000 that's somehow just the perfect machine always. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's that you get people from all over, all over the world. Just, I mean, not all over the world, but um,
lots of walks
you
of
know,
life.
numerous backgrounds, and that's part of the great thing of being in the military was getting to learn how to interact and work with people from different backgrounds.
So you get to be a Marine, and you then have like a 5-year contract to work and be a part of that, like for sure.
Yeah.
And you just get sent off to kind of anywhere. How was the experience for you on getting, for lack of words, like your official papers? So here's your job, here's your place of living now.
So that goes in a couple different points. So as you know, like after boot camp, I went to live in Florida for almost a year. That was just for my school. That's a pretty long time for any military school.
Oh,
But I had kind of a niche job that required quite a bit more training than
gotcha.
your average person that could be done with school in like 3 months.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
Yeah. So I was there for 11 months, and not all of it was in school. Like we had little like limbo times for a couple weeks, but that's where I was for that period. And then towards the end of your schooling is when you get your official orders telling you where you're going to go after school's done, and you're just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting until it's like posted on the Marines website, and you can see where you've been assigned. And that's when I found out that day finally came. People are like, they're posted. We're all like rush to the computers. And I think mine was like 1QG, I think is what the designator was. Where is this? Saw it was Japan. And I requested California. That was my request. Because at the time, I didn't really have big intentions of like being that far from my family and friends. I still wanted to be relatively close to where I could still like come visit. But I got that notice that I was going to Japan. I was like, I wasn't like mad, but I was like, it was mostly uncertain. That's how that went. Got sent to Japan.
And your overall experience in Japan was a net positive, net sucky. How did you like it or not?
100% net positive. Like, greatest thing that ever happened to me was getting sent out of the country. I met incredible people. So you have that shared camaraderie while you're out there. You're all away from your family and your close friends. You're in a foreign country trying to like learn how to get along, still have fun, enjoy yourself. And it was great. It was incredible. Met my wife there, brought her back to the States with me, but it was awesome. I loved it.
Do you have intentions of living out of the country again eventually?
Yeah, I'd say that's one of my big goals. I wouldn't mind living in Japan again. I love it there. But I do want to try finding a way to live in Europe for a time just to see what kind of lifestyle that is by comparison. The aspect of being able to like country hop
Hmm.
is really enticing. So I'd like to spend a few years living abroad over there and see how it goes.
For anyone who might consider doing military and is wondering about the whole like living out of America, living in it, is the finances pretty well adjusted for a person? Do those who end up staying state bound, I know states vary a lot by how much it costs to live there, but does the money kind of help match you, or you're always going to be well enough off no matter where you go, even if it's somewhere more expensive, like let's say London or Switzerland, or if you go somewhere that's maybe not as expensive, like in my opinion, Japan might not be that expensive. So does it generally work out for a person so they not worry about the finances so much? They'll be pretty much taken care of no matter what.
Yeah. So on that aspect, there's a lot of people, there's like this stigma that military service members aren't paid enough. I've never really thought that. I always had enough money for whatever I wanted. Um, Granted, sure, you could start out making more money in like a trade job or whatever position you have. You could make more money. But for the average person, like starting out in the military, it's like, it's not bad. You don't really have expenses. You have living paid for. But as an example, while I was in Japan, I was lucky enough to live in some very nice barracks when I first got there, like pretty much like dorm rooms, and had my own bedroom where there was like 2 bedrooms in our suite, and I shared the small kitchen and washer dryer and stuff like that. But while you're there, you get a extra stipend, extra bit of money to pay for additional stuff, which I didn't really understand because it's cheaper to live in Japan, but they give you extra money on top of your regular pay for like adjusted cost of living. I didn't understand it, but hey, it was an extra, I think
It's more money, so
just a single person would get an extra like $250 a month. It would range. It would adjust based on like what inflation was going or like the dollar to yen ratio. So it would fluctuate, but a single person, just an extra $250 a month.
for staying in the barracks.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. But then a married person, they'll get double. And then living off base overseas, they have a housing allowance. So they'll pay the rent on a house or apartment, whatever. So that's what I did after I got married. And then on top of that, they give you this like chunk of money to pay for utilities. And in my case, the money they gave me for utilities was well in excess of what I needed. And so I was chilling. I was
A little stock holding over there's like, all
like,
right.
I could spend whole paychecks and then still have like so much money on the next one. It was great. It was great.
Well, good. So you get done with your 5 years. You're now in the Army doing HR in Salt Lake City area. Where do you want to be in the future? Still doing Army for a while? Do you see yourself doing military long term, or what's your idea in that realm?
Well, I like to have options. I like to have a lot of different directions I could go. I don't want to be like dead set on a single path. Right now, I'm working on trying to essentially become a officer, which required going to school in the Army. And it's a pretty lengthy application process and screening. And then if I'm accepted, there's like another 6 months of training I have to go to. So all that, it's a lengthy process, and it's right now the Army doesn't really need officers so much, and so the competition's a lot tighter. So right now I'm kind of looking at other options, just in case that doesn't pan out for me. I want to have a good solid backup. So right now, so I have a degree in finance, but the jobs I'm looking at might not really need finance. I'm looking at possible like other Department of Defense jobs
Mm.
as a civilian. So I'd still work directly with the military. I just wouldn't be wearing the uniform. My uniform would be
What you
maybe a little bit nicer shirt,
got?
and which I think could be still okay. I like being around military people. There's just the certain like work ethic, the shared backgrounds of your training and whatnot. It's something I've come to really value and want to be a part of. So if given the opportunity, like I plan on holding out in the Army for another what, 11 and a half years. um, but even with that in the Army aspect, I could be a full-time soldier, or I could just be a part-timer and have my civilian career on the side.
Okay.
So that's generally where I'm looking right now.
Well, it's good that it's not just, you get into the military, you do your contract, and then you kind of just like, okay, here's my lane. I'm going to stay here and then wait for the contract to be totally done, and then I'm out. You get to still have options along the way.
Yeah. And what's different with the being an officer is you don't exactly have a contract. It's like an open contract,
Mm.
essentially. You have a service obligation in certain cases. If you take like a bonus or something, you might have a incurred service obligation. I won't, because I didn't take any scholarships for school. I didn't take any of the Army's money to become an officer. I'd used all my own resources available to me. And so beyond it might be like a 2-year obligation. I can essentially resign my commission, is what it's called. I can resign my commission at any point and just be done.
Gotcha. So to make sure that this isn't overly military based, and some people are listening in going, "Where the hell's the academic part?" We'll tie it in a little bit. This is just meant to be like an avenue people can take in the process of doing their degree. Because Mr. Hansen here did mention he got a finance degree, so you're able to do a 4-year program, I understand, at
Yep.
some university.
Yeah. So I did the finance program at the University of Utah. It's been a great school, in my opinion. I didn't really take a lot of time to be on campus outside of school, just being married, and like I have friends outside of school that I'd rather spend time with. So I didn't really take a lot of time to like get to know people too well. So
Hmm. And were you technically still in like that's when you started being in the army, was while you're doing the degree? Were you fully detached from the military for a time, or?
yeah, so after I left active service, I joined the Army Reserve like a month after school started. Um, and it allows you to still have the flexibility to have a regular job, have an education going on at the same time. So my Army Reserve demands on my time were really low, and so that's what allows people to continue their education. And that's kind of just the path I decided to go, rather than becoming like going through ROTC in the university. I just stayed in the reserve for the benefits mostly, um, and we went to school.
Are you able to tell me any differences? Like, do you know much about the ROTC and how that kind of plays out differently than if you're in the reserves?
Yeah, so I could have been in ROTC while being in the reserves. And what would have changed is that I would have had to have a couple additional military courses on top of my regular schoolwork, and then spend the additional time outside of classes performing hula
Tasks,
soldier
duties.
stuff.
Yeah.
And there's like certain like scholarships you can get or programs if you're accepted. They give you like an additional stipend for going through ROTC. I wasn't really able to get, like, those weren't going to be options to me, I don't think. Not that I could find. And being in both the reserves and ROTC, I wouldn't really have had a rank in the military. I just wear this, like, my rank would have just been like this dot. And my time while I was in school, when I go to like my weekend army stuff, I would be like pretty much being mentored by officers instead of enlisted people that I work with now. So they kind of like teach and mentor you as you're going through ROTC to become an officer.
Gotcha.
One of the perks of being an ROTC is that, like, when you graduate from college, you're like, you're done. You're an officer. That's because during the ROTC period, you go to officer candidate school, like during the summer semester, you take a couple, like 6 weeks in one summer and then 6 weeks in another summer. And so when you get your degree, you're done. That's it. Whereas I have to go through this lengthy application process and go through that route.
So for those who might be considering military for the sake of, like cheaper education or maybe easier education, and I don't know if I love that, but like in some ways it seems easy only in the flow of it, not necessarily that the classes are easier. Is it generally, is your path kind of typical that people might take of doing like a 5 year or whatever short contract active duty, then they get the benefits for education? Or is it while you're like how you were with the reserves, was that what gave you a tuition reduction and such?
So it was my active duty time that gave me my education benefits, at least the better ones. So my education benefits pay 100% of my schooling, like the highest in-state paid tuition, they'll pay it. And so that benefit, I think, is significantly better than what is available to just the Army Reserve. They do have a similar like tuition program, but they don't pay the full tuition of the school you're attending. But since I was already active duty, I already had access to the benefits, and I kept my military service going because I wanted to become an officer and I wanted to keep my time in the military going rather than just taking a long break. As I said, it didn't really take a huge demand on my time, and there's additional benefits being in the Army Reserve that is worth it for me to keep doing it.
And if I caught that correctly, the catch for the tuition thing is they'll pay the whatever schooling you want in-state tuition. So like you have to, like, if you lived in say Salt Lake and you wanted to go to UCLA, do they just instead take whatever, like if the University of Utah's in-state is the highest, do they just take that and throw it over, or how's that kind of play out?
No, what's great is there was this I think it was a law that was passed that any service member leaving active duty, they have 5 years. I believe it's 5. Don't quote me 100%, but I believe it's 5 years to choose pretty much any state they want to go to school in. And they'll, like, for the sake of money, you're an in-state student.
Well, that's a nice law. Just you're the Omni Man. You just like I am from all these states.
Yeah.
For a moment, and just like that's the one.
So I could have, if I wanted to, go to any school in the country and get the in-state tuition paid. Whatever I wanted to do. I could have even gone overseas if I wanted to. Go to school in Germany.
And was it the particular finance program at the University of Utah, or is it more of like family closeness and such that made you choose there?
A
Or
bit of
what
both.
particular? Okay.
A bit of both. Being away from the family for those 5 years, I only came home a couple times. I was more considering maybe like a school in Texas or Pacific Northwest up in like Oregon or Washington. But family, kind of convinced me to come home for a little while until I decided to leave the state again after I finished school. Looked into, what are the best schools in the state? And we're not a huge state. We're not like most renowned for our schools, but decided that the University of Utah was the preferred choice. Their business school is great. Their professors are awesome.
Overall positive experience. Like if anyone else is considering U of U for business, you'd say thumbs up. Sounds good.
Oh yeah, I mean, no school's perfect, of course, but my experience with majority of the professors went pretty well. There's always going to be one or two. They're just
They really catch you for story time and be like, you're not.
yeah. But overall, the facilities were great. The teachers were great. Like, I enjoyed my time there.
And still in the vein of the finance degree, if anyone's considering, obviously you only know the University of Utah perspective, but let's just say we're speaking on finance degrees. Is there anything in your opinion that you would say to help either sway someone towards or against it? Like, hey, this actually involves a lot more math than you might think, and that might be a problem for you. Or, oh, it's actually pretty nice because I don't have to take too advanced of science classes, or anything that might stand out to you as either a pro or con for someone who might be considering it.
So there actually isn't a ton of like difficult math involved with the finance degree. The highest level I took was calculus for, I think it was business calc. So essentially just finance. But
Finance story problems with calculus.
that was the hardest level of math I took. And it was, for me, a bit above my head. Granted, that gap between high school and college for me, it was a bit rough, like jumping in, and the class I was taking was like 7 a.m. and I'm doing calculus. So it wasn't ideal. Otherwise, I didn't really need to take any science courses besides the general education ones. There was a lot of flexibility in the finance degree, so you could kind of gear or specialize towards different avenues. Myself, I took a good number of investing in like real estate courses, but somebody else could gear more towards accounting without having an accounting degree, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of different aspects that go along with the finance degree that I think it was a good choice to be at that school because that offered some flexibility on what I wanted to do.
Good deal. So, figure we're getting kind of near the end. We don't want to try and do like a whole hour for this interview, but here's the big old gotcha question. Everyone gets it. You get to have one redo, whether it's tiny or gigantic. The way that works, like the more I do this, the more I realize I refine it a little bit better. You get to travel back in time to your old self, and you only get to remember one thing. You have amnesia of everything else, but somehow one thing you're able to remember. whether it's I would have done the Marines for sure, but maybe I would have not done the Army Reserve, or maybe I've actually would have gone to Air Force, or maybe I would have done a different degree, or done my schooling earlier, later. Literally anything. Would you change anything? And if so, what would that be?
Oh, that is.
And the only reason I ask this question to everyone, it's kind of dumb in the sense that, well, you can't change anything. I go, I know, but it's for any of those who are listening who might be kind of, John 2.0 or Bryce 2.0 that might be right at the same step where we would have made the change or be like, oh, I would have made sure I did this, and that could help that person be like, oh, okay, I guess I could consider doing that too, and help either save them time, grief, whatever.
Knowing what I know now, I have enjoyed the Army, and I have enjoyed living here in Utah, the adventures I've been able to have. But I would have probably just stayed in the Marine Corps. Um, Whether it would be good for me or not, like at the time, I was living a very easy life. There's like no issues on money or finances, no stresses in that regard. And when I left the Marine Corps and moved to the U.S., I brought my wife with me, and that I didn't really fully like. I knew it'd be a difficult transition, and I thought it would, all be pretty manageable and pretty easy to do. But man, it was just so stressful. Like the first 6 months, especially, it was like I was depressed. Like we didn't have as much finances as we had before. Like trying to help my newly immigrated wife navigate the world that she's been thrown into. It was just an incredible amount of stress on myself, her, our relationship, everything. So I would have probably just like stayed with the Marine Corps. I still would have. The Marine Corps has a option to go become an officer, which it's an incredible program, and that's what I keep getting drawn back to is like I should have just gone and done this. But they'll essentially pay for you. They'll have you go to school while you're still active duty, and your job is to be a student. Like you're in an ROTC program while you're there, but you're getting paid your full salary. You're not having to pay for school. Like
Sounds
it's
pretty
such
all
like
right.
I don't know why I didn't do that. Because I feel like it would have alleviated a lot of stressors on us. And like we've been in the U.S. now for almost 4 years, so it's easier now. But the first year, 2 years even, it's just
There's a big
glad it's
grueling.
over. Glad it's over. So I would have stuck with it. Would have stayed with the Marine Corps. Missed that.
Well, you're still making a good life out of it, it seems, even if it's not been always nice to you.
Doing my best. Doing my best.
So for our last couple of moments here, I turn the time over to the guest here. This is case you, Johnny boy. And whether it's you felt like I didn't ask you something you wish I did, or if you want to have your chance to tell the 14 or 4 million people listening this one little thing, whether it's to make a joke, be inspiring, or have nothing else to say besides goodbye, here's your time now. What would you like to say?
Oh my God. I got all the wisdom to impart.
As long as that's not the pigeon joke.
No.
That's a good one for those in the know.
Yeah, no. So it's tremulous times right now. There's a lot of people that might have considered joining the military before that are second guessing it now, and there's good reason, but large in part, the people you meet in the military and the people you work with, they're not the bad people. Like they're just honest. good people that are doing a job, trying to make money, get the bills paid. So, however you want to view the military, it's filled with just incredible people. Like there's a few out there that are just not great. They're awful, but there's
Those
great
people
people.
are everywhere.
Yeah. You get them everywhere you go. But I don't know if like I'm 100% going to stay in the military, but I love the people I work with.
You
That's
don't
fun.
regret that you did it.
I don't regret it at all. It's been a great experience for me. Lots of learning, lots of building. Like you should have seen me when I was younger. I was just all over the place, right? I still am, but I have wisdom and experience that helps me get through some sticky situations where otherwise I'd be pretty well screwed. So, I would still do the military. Like, I'd do it all over again.
Hopefully that helps inspire anyone that was considering military as an option, that they know that they can. And even if whatever, things in the sky and other parts of the country might be happening, it might freak you out, but there'll be risks and issues with anything, and it can still go smoothly well for anybody.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Johnny, for coming on to the episode today. It was great having you, and you speak very well. Have you been on podcasts very often?
No, this is the first
Well,
one.
you fooled me. You did a great job. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Be love talking about the military. I love talking about school, finance, money, all that fun stuff. Happy to be here.
Good deal. And to the rest of you listening who are here, thanks to you for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye bye for now.